Hey, this is Ken at Capital Advantage Tutoring. It's my job to get you past the Series 7, right? So this is going to be the way too fast rundown of kind of the content outline. I'm going to go follow it a little bit. But again, what's the rule? Read the fucking book. You got to read the book. Videos are just a supplement to help you get the big picture. You need to read the book. Now, you don't need to memorize every little thing, but you need to read the book. Am I being subtle? Read the fucking book. Let's go. These videos are going to help you pass the exam. Again, supplement, read the book. But here's the thing. If you want to be a rep, what happens? Step one, you got to bring in the damn fucking business, right? You got to bring in the business, period. That's what it's about. Your firm does not care how charming you are or how well you tie your tie. If you don't build a book, you are useless to them. But don't get it twisted. This isn't to say anything to close a deal. You've got a playbook. You've got rules, and if you screw around with how you communicate, FINRA will crawl up your ass. So let's break down the communications game. FINRA Rule 2210 splits public communications into three buckets. You got to know where your message fits. First of all, we have retail communication. That's sent to more than 25 retail clients within 30 days. Not 25 or more than 25 in a 30-day period. Email blasts, websites, social media posts, seminar invites, all that shit. That's got to be pre-approved by a principal, and sometimes it's filed with FINRA. Let's get into that for a second. So if you're a new member firm, all retail communications have to be sent 10 days to FINRA, 10 business days prior to first use. Websites, newspapers, magazines, radios, TVs, telephone, audio recordings, videos, signs, and billboards, all that shit has to be filed with FINRA before. That's only the first year. Now let's go to the rest one. After the first year, when you have to file all your shit, this is the next one. Options retail communications sent before the ODD has been delivered. You have to send it 10 calendar days before first use. Any kind of mutual fund stuff that has performance or rankings, self-created rankings or ratings, have to be 10 days with business days before, which sucks. Okay. So let's back this up a little bit. If you're doing option retail communications before the option disclosure doc is sent, you have to send it 10 calendar days before, and you wait for the FINRA. Okay. It's because you're sending it before the ODD. Investment companies like mutual funds, retail communications that have self-created rankings or ratings, you send to FINRA 10 business days before first use. Futures, 10 business days before first use.
If you want to skip a few minutes of the rambling, just watch this attachment I put on here, and then you can just skip a lot of it. This attachment, if you can zoom in and read it, it will give you pretty much everything you need to know in one screen.
DPPs within. Now remember, before means before, within means within. So within means if I publish it today, I have 10 days. So these are the ones that are within. DPPs are within 10 days. CMOs are within 10 days. Derivatives like options after the ODD are within 10 days. And any kind of film versions of TV or radio ads. So let's make sure we back this up. If it's options before the ODD, 10 calendar days before. Mutual funds, 10 with self-created rankings or ratings, 10 days before. Regular mutual fund stuff is within 10 days. Futures are 10 business days before. DPPs, CMOs, and options are within 10 business days. Then we have institutional communications. Goes only to financial professionals, banks, broker-dealers, hedge funds, RIAs, stuff like that. They don't need filing, but it doesn't mean you can be reckless. It still has to be fair, balanced, and factual. These people aren't clueless, but they can still be misled. FINRA doesn't care who the audience is if you're lying. So again, retail is more than 25. That's individuals, and it has to be pre-approved pretty much. Institutional is going to be reviewed after the fact because you're sending it to register reps and hedge fund guys and stuff like that. They are more sophisticated, but you still can't lie to them. And then the final one is correspondence. That's to 25 or fewer individuals, like an email, like a one-off email, a direct message, text, letter, whatever. It's a lower bar, but you still can't mislead. This is your day-to-day client contact. Be smart, be honest, and save the hard sell for the face-to-face shit. So understand this stuff. So it goes, retail has to be pre-approved and maybe filed, which I covered. Institutional and correspondence are both reviewed after the fact. If you're hosting an event, here's what you need to do. You need to disclose all the risks. If you're pitching REITs, you better talk about illiquidity and loss of principal. You can't give them any false hope. You're not selling dreams. You're selling investments with risk. You have to make sure that you just are fair and balanced all the time. Every slide, handout, or script must be pre-approved in advance and stored for record keeping usually for 3 years, but 2 years readily accessible. Now, if you are giving a speech, that's considered a public appearance or like a back and forth interactive. It doesn't need to be pre-approved, but the person has to be trained and they're going to review it after the fact. So again, handouts at a seminar have to be pre-approved, written. If it's verbal, then they have to, you're going to review or spot check it after the fact, but the person does have to have training to make sure that they know what they're supposed to say and not what they're supposed to say. Okay, let's talk about some product specific stuff. This is kind of where we kind of get screwed up sometimes because we forget. We think, oh, we got the first 3 done. It's not there. So mutual funds and variable contracts, okay? We can show performance. We can show as high as 12%. But if you show any kind of hypothetical, you have to also show 0. You can't cherry pick returns or highlight the good year. You must show 1, 5, or 10-year performance if it's available against the appropriate benchmarks. So understand, you have to, like, if it's a fund that's been out for 7 years, you have to show 1, 5, and lifetime. If it's for more than 10 years, 1 year, 5 year, and 10 year. Not each year, 1 year return, a 5-year return, and a 10-year return. You have to show all of it. And you also always have to say, past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Understand that. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. If you want to talk options and stuff, you can't even talk to them until they get the ODD. Now, if you send some sort of ad or something or pitch it, some sort of option stuff to a client or a future client, without the ODD, it has to be very general. Has to be extremely general. You have to be like big picture shit. Then once you do the ODD, you can actually talk about real stuff, do worksheets and stuff like that. Now, worksheet template has to be pre-approved. The completed one doesn't. A worksheet, let's just like, these are all the products and profits and losses you can get. You have to make sure the ODD gets delivered to them. Now, when they open an account, you have to do, I remember date 15, right? Disclosure first, the ODD disclosure. Then you get approved by an ROP. Then they can trade. And then the options agreement has to be returned within 15 days. But remember, you have to make sure it's suitable, and you have to make sure they know that you have a lot of disclosures saying options are high risk, leverage, and absolutely not for everyone. Now, munis, these are regulated by MSRB. Municipal securities are regulated by MSRB. They write the rules. But FINRA and SEC do the enforcement. You can't say safe or guaranteed because munis can default. People want to think that munis you can't default, but they can. You have to be clear, honest, and don't apply anything that you can't back up. If you're part of the member of the manager or the member of an IPO, you can't do any research for 10 days after the IPO. And then if it's a follow-on or a secondary, only the manager has to wait 3 days to do research. That's all it is. It's a 10-day quiet period or a 3-day for a follow-on only for the managers. Now let's say you're talking about CMOs and stuff like that. You remember, CMOs, you cannot compare them to any other thing, and you have to talk about prepayment risk, extension risk, all the risks. You can't label it a safe unless it's literally backed by the government. Even then, you got to say that it's not safe because there is market risk. Understand, again, CMOs you cannot compare to any other product, and you have to make sure you talk about the average life versus the expected life, okay, and or the actual term, and you have to make sure that you disclose the risks, and don't compare it to anything else. So let's do a wrap up on this. If it's public facing, if it's going to more than 25 retail, principal signs off on it. Fair and balanced and not misleading is the golden rule every single time, no matter what. So again, retail, pre-approved by a principal. Correspondence and institutional, reviewed, spot check after the fact, but again, you can't fucking lie. If it's a variable insurance, you have to make sure people know it's a security and it's an insurance product. You have to list all the risks. You have to talk, you can't gloss over fees or the death benefit clauses, and you have to have the name of the insurance. It is absolutely going to be transparency. Okay. If you want to say your fund is like a top 5, you have to be a legit source like Morningstar. You have to list the category, the source, and the date. You can't just show your 1 year. You need all long and short-term numbers. If you're going to talk about the bond volatility rating, there are some rules on this. Okay. 1, you can't call it a risk rating. For sure, you cannot call it a risk rating. You have to go to volatility. You have to use the most recently available rating. You can't have a good one and then have a bad one later. You have to use the most recent one. You have to disclose your criteria and methodology to come up with the rating. You have to have, there's certain disclosures. You have to have the name of the entity that issued the rating. You have to give the most current rating, a link to the website that includes the criteria and the methodology, and a description of the rating in narrative form. You can't just use fucking symbols. You have to describe what each rating symbol means. If you use symbols, you have to make sure there's a narrative that explains it. You're selling deferred annuities. Suitability is everything. So deferred variable annuities, suitability is everything. You need the age, the income, the liquidity needs, investment goals, all that shit matters. The principal must approve the transaction before it goes to the insurance company. Because remember, annuities are both insurance, variable annuities are insurance and securities. You have to make sure that the principal approves that before it goes to the insurance company. If they want to do options, FINRA must approve your firm to do options. Now, the client must be approved and get the ODD. You can't just throw them in there. There's a whole thing. And let's go over that again. Date 015. First, determine that options are suitable for your client. Then send them the ODD with all the disclosure docs. Then the ROP, the Series 4, approves it. Then they can start trading, not before that. And what happens in the date 015 part, the 015, the options agreement, which literally just lists what they can and can't do, it has to be returned signed within 15 days. If it's not, then the client can only do what they call closing transactions, where they can only get rid of the options they have. They don't make them get rid of it, but they can't add to their positions. They have to do closing where they're getting rid of their positions. So remember, go out and drum up business, but know the fucking rules. You're not a car salesman. You're a rep with a license and liability. Everything you say, every email, every call script, every LinkedIn post can be reviewed. So say it right, write it clean, and don't get cute. FINRA doesn't like surprises, and you don't want to learn that the hard way. So you're out here trying to sell securities, that's great. Then you better know what the SEC says about how you talk to the public, because you're not going to fuck around. Let's start with the big one, Act of 33. It's called the Truth in Securities Act. It's all about new issues, IPOs, mutual funds, new annuities, stuff like that, making sure that the investors aren't like going into this blind. They want to make sure there's disclosures. So first of all, after you file the registration statement, right, we should know that already. You file the registration statement, that's the S1, there's a 20-day cooling off period. You can't, and we'll go deeper into it later. I just want to make sure we talk about it. During the 20-day cooling off period, that's called the registration period. You can't sell or even offer the new security until it's either registered or exempt. No pre-marketing. I call it no moans, okay? No money, no orders, no ads, no soliciting. That's what it is, moans. I'm an idiot. But no money, no orders, no advertising, no solicitation, no sales, okay? That's the no moans. Just none of that, okay? Now, you pretty much can just go, hey, this is what it is. We're going to send out a preliminary prospectus, and you can get an indication of interest. We'll come back to that. So you can't do a little teaser video on Instagram about an IPO. Until the SEC signs off it, your lips are sealed. Don't try to be tricky. Don't go, oops. Don't talk about the security unless you follow the certain rules. Investment company stuff. This one's aimed at mutual fund and variable product marketing. Your ads must be fair and balanced and not some Fantasyland highlight reel. Here's what you can't do. You can't imply that it's safe or offers a guaranteed returns. You can only show one good year and pretend the bad ones didn't happen. No cherry picking. You have to show 1 year, 5 year, and then 10 year. If the fund is less than 10 years, you have to show 1, 5, and then lifetime. You can't use charts or language that would mislead a normal human being. If a reasonable person goes, oh, this looks risk-free, you screwed up. Under Rule 42, you can do some ads. You can make like a little mini prospectus if you follow certain rules, okay? It's like an ad. You have to have a clear disclaimer that this is not a final, okay? You have to direct people to the full prospectus, and you can't talk about hype, exaggeration, or out of crazy performance claims. Now, what's interesting, if you can do advertising on mutual funds, you can show a hypothetical return, like, oh, if it earned 5%, 10%, as high as 12%. But if you show any sort of return, you also have to show zero. Like, what if you got a 0% return? Any of these variable mutual funds, if you do hypotheticals, which is frowned on, right? But you can do it. You can show as high as a 12% return. But if you show any sort of return, you also have to show zero, like if they earn nothing. So bottom line, if you're not linking it to the full prospectus and making the risk obvious, their ad's not a good thing. Now, they also, for mutual funds only, they have a thing called a summary prospectus, okay? Because no one's going to read the whole fucking prospectus. This allows for a short version. But we have to make sure that we're doing stuff. We have to make sure it's clear, concise, updated, and it is considered advertising. Again, you have to link it to the full prospectus, maybe online. You can't be misleading. You can't skip the risks. And it cannot come with an application to invest. You have to send it to them, and if they want to do it, they have to call back. This is good for speeding up delivery, but if you're dumbing it down to reception, it's not a good thing. Again, you can do it. You can absolutely do the emitting or the mini prospectus, right? What do I call it? What the hell did I call it? The summary prospectus. You can do that, but what you have to make sure is that it doesn't have an application to invest. That's the big thing. They have to go out of the way to do it. Now let's talk about after it's issued. The Act of 34. This act covers trading, reporting, keeping the market all clean. And I've done this. Okay. Now, you should know this already from the SIE. Okay. If you're underwriting muni bonds, you've got responsibilities. You have to do things. You have to get issues to commit to ongoing financial disclosures. You got to try to do that. There's only so much you can do. You have to disclose material events like ratings downgrade, missed payments, any kind of legal mess. You have to disclose that. So if I give you an order, I've seen this. If I give you an order unsolicited and you go, oh, right before you place the order, you see that there's a rating downgrade or they missed a payment or some legal problem, you must let me know. Okay? Good. Okay. Just because the bond was sold once doesn't mean you don't have ongoing responsibilities when you're selling this stuff. Okay. Now, 15C33, which I don't really care. I don't care about the numbers. Okay. You can't use client money like it's yours. That's a customer protection rule. You have to keep the customer's assets segregated. You have to maintain a reserve account with extra cash or securities. That's called the free, can't remember the word. Free credit balance. I couldn't think of the word. So if you have a free credit balance, which is extra cash in the account, you have to let the client know, stuff like that. Okay. Never commingle client funds with firm funds. Never do that. It can be in the same vault, which isn't a real thing anymore, but it has to be clearly defined. Okay. Because the reason, remember, all these rules are here because somebody screwed up, right? So this is here because firms used to borrow client assets like as a piggy bank. They do there, they move it around, they go, oh, we went bankrupt, we don't have your money. So they have to make sure that all of this stuff is separated. Okay. So we got to respect the process, all that stuff. If you're hyping a fund, pushing muni bonds, or doing anything remotely salesy, watch your language. Use real numbers, show the risks, link the documents, and don't get creative with the truth. Because the second you start twisting the facts, you mislead a client or cut corners, the SEC is going to show up and kick down the fucking door. Now let's go to the next one. Options and munis. Reps love to go crazy with this stuff, and they catch a fucking punch in the face by the regulators. Okay, so the CBOE is for options, MSRB is for munis. But remember, MSRB 1 doesn't enforce because the FINRA and the SEC do it for them. And they don't regulate the issuers, they regulate the traders and the bank dealers and the broker dealers who are trading them or offering them. Okay. So if you're doing munis or options, you're double regulated, FINRA and CBOE or MSRB. Okay, on top of all the FINRA rules about communication, CBOE adds their own shit, okay? So now, 9.8, but we don't care. Addressing communication to the customers. Sounds easy, but remember this gets screwed up more than you think. You must deliver the options communications to the actual customer, not their assistant, not their spouse, and not an email blast hoping it fucking hits them, okay? This applies to emails, mails, text, direct messages, whatever. It's sliding into DMs, all that shit, okay? If the wrong person gets it, that's on you. That's a problem. You got to make sure it goes to the right person always. Know who you're talking to, and don't screw it up because the compliance is going to be on your ass. This one is all over the test. Delivery of the ODD, the option disclosure doc. You cannot have an account approved, okay? You cannot have an account approved or talk to them about options until the client receives the ODD. There's actually rules about whether an advertising has to be pre-approved or filed before or after if the ODD gets it. The ODD is all the real risks of options. Always remember my Dado 15. I say it all the time. Disclosure, then approval, then trade, then options agreement 15 days later, okay? So the options agreement is 15 days later signed. The disclosure doc is always first. You're not allowed to talk about getting rich with puts until they've fucking seen this thing. So don't do a seminar or doing a call spread on someone's account until they got the ODD and the ROP has approved it. Okay. All communications must be balanced. We know that. Risks must be clearly disclosed. I can't fucking speak. No calls make you rich marketing. This shit is a violation. Always remember, keep in mind, it's going to be fair and balanced. I can explain strategies, but it better be sound and not a get rich quick. So most people be covered calls, stuff like that. You got to make sure you do strategies that meet what they need and what they can understand. Now we're talking about MSRB. This is munis. And remember, 529 plans are considered munis. 529 plans are considered munis. I promise you that. Okay. So we're talking about, I remember, this is all about getting the client, advertising, soliciting, all that shit. That's what this whole video is about, the soliciting part. Okay. So now, first of all, all the ads for muni stuff has to be clear, fair, and not misleading. Sounds familiar. Okay. That means you explain the risk, even if they're boring. 529's even stricter. You have to disclose fees, penalties, any of the tax stuff. So if you put somebody in a 529 from another state, you need to explain that, oh, they may have state tax cuts, even though 529s are federal tax-free, the growth. If it's in another state, they may have state tax issues. So we deal with that. All the records for this shit has to be kept for 4 years. You can't call muni bonds safe or guaranteed because there is default risk. Don't think they aren't. Everyone seems to think that GO bonds are default-free because they're by the state government. They still have default risk. Detroit, Puerto Rico, shit like that. It doesn't matter if you're pitching options, you're selling muni bonds, no hype, no half-truths, no shortcuts. Now, if you want to talk about other things like an muni fund, right, performance data, you have to show stuff like where the source is, how long it was for, how current the calculation is, all that stuff. What kind of, if there's 12B1 fees and all that, you have to add the tax adjusted calculations if you can. Okay. If you do, I usually assume you can't do tax equivalent, but the point is, if you do that, you have to put in all the fees and all the disclosures. All advertising has to be approved by a principal. Interactive content is okay. As long as you state on there, you may get different. It has to be pre-approved. And you may have to say, as I'm starting my ass off, you have to say something along the lines of, oh, you may get differing results because it's not always for you. It's more for performative. It's like just display purposes is probably where we're thinking. That's where we're talking about. Now, remember, got to push that hair back, right? When you're issuing a security, non-exempt, you have to know whether it's exempt and non-exempt or illegal, right? So exempt means you don't have to follow the Act of 33 rules. But remember, that doesn't mean you can rip people up. You still have to follow the rules. You don't have to follow the Act of 33 rules. If you are non-exempt, this is kind of where we're going to go. We're going to talk about how to do this. Okay, so we start off, we bring the issue to market, okay? Because look, it's not like you just go, boom, hey, we're going to go public, but we got a ticker symbol. We can push the stock. There's more to it, okay? So due diligence, all the lawyers and underwriters have to rip apart the company to determine what's going on, that like the numbers and all that stuff. And then they file their registration statement. That's filed with the SEC, full transparency, everything, good, bad, everything. In that it's called an S1. That starts a 20-day cooling off period where you can't talk about the stock. During that time, you can do a preliminary prospectus, a red herring. If this goes out during the cooling off period, no prices or time because you're not assuming that it's going to be effective. After the SEC approval, but before that, let's not jump yet. So during the preliminary prospectus, we can do a preliminary, during the pre-registration or the registration process. Preliminary prospectus, red herring. It's like your prospectus without the date and time. We can do indications of interest. Hey, I'm interested. You will get questions on that. And you can register it in the various states. When you take your next exam, you'll see that. It's called Blue Sky. So red herring, IOI, Blue Sky. And then the lawyers and underwriters are always doing due diligence to make sure that everything is up to date. And that's the problem. If they make an amendment during the 20-day review, the SEC actually gets another 20 days to review. If they do it after the 20-day review and you're effective, then they just amend it, they fix it, and then they move on. Okay, now, after it's effective, the final prospectus, you get to get this after SEC effectiveness. It has the price, and it must be delivered at or before confirmation. So that means if I sell you a bond or a stock that's non-exempt, the prospectus has to be delivered no later than completion of the trade or confirmation, which is all T+1. Okay, that makes sense. Now, the question is, for how long after the IPO are you subject to that rule? This is an SIE thing, but we're going to do it anyway. If it's over the counter, not exchange listed, and an IPO, IPO over the counter, which means IPO not exchange listed. It's for the next 90 days after the IPO. You must get it by confirmation. If it's an additional offering like follow on, we issue more shares and more shares after the IPO. It's 40 days. Think biblical, Noah, Moses, shit like that. So for 40 days after the IPO, you have to get the prospectus by confirmation of the trade. And if it's on the exchange and an IPO, it's only 25 days. So IPO on an exchange is 25. IPO over the counter is 90, and additional over the counter is 40. There's one missing. Oh, if you go with an exchange listed security and they issue more shares, follow on or an additional, it's 0 days because they've been doing 10Qs, 10Ks, they've been ripped apart by the exchanges. A lot of that stuff is there already, so you don't have to do a new prospectus. Okay, so again, 90, 40, 25. Then we have the underwriting agreement. Remember, the underwriting agreement is the contract between the issuer and the lead underwriter. It spells out the roles and the compensation. Then we have an agreement among underwriters, okay, or the agreement among underwriters, or I remember the other one, but it's our underwriting agreement is the one thing. Agreement among underwriters and syndicate letter. That's where all the extra, we bring in other broker dealers. So a lead underwriter comes in, they say Morgan Stanley, they pitch me for my tutoring company. They're the lead underwriter. I sign the underwriting agreement with them. Then they bring other broker dealers in their syndicate. So it's either the syndicate letter or the agreement among underwriters. But they also add in a selling group agreement, which is a bunch of selling group goombas from Staten Island. They're smile and doll, baby. They're not part of the syndicate. They're just like third-party marketers where they get like this selling concession. So again, I'll never see a question. I haven't yet on like the breakdown between selling concession and total takedown and all that shit. I haven't yet. I just haven't. Could be on there, but I do videos on that. Now, so make sure we got it. Lead underwriter Morgan Stanley. They bring in the JP Morgans and the Morgans and the UBS and the Goldman and the Bank of America and the Merrill Lynch, same thing, to help sell the deal. They're part of the syndicate. Then there's also other smaller broker dealers that just phone call. They're all the Staten Island, Long Island guys. Think Wolf of Wall Street, not the illegal part. They're just selling the bonds. You're just adding more and more reach outside bonds or securities, adding a bigger reach. I talked about already, blue sky laws. That's a state level registration unless they're exempt. So anything on an exchange, or a bank or a federal government or state government, they're exempt from state registration. Okay. That's the deal. They have to register. Some of them have to register with the SEC, but those things for sure, investment companies, exchange listed banks, utilities, nonprofits, federal government, munis do not register on the state level at all. Even if they have to register on the SEC level, they don't register on the state level. So remember, you're selling this shit, but it's compliance controlled. Every piece has to be set up before you pitch this shit. You have to follow the rules, hardcore. During the pre-filing period, which is before you file the registration submit, shut the fuck up. No talking, no hyping, no hinting. You can talk to the underwriters. The underwriters can talk to the issuers to set up the deal, but no telling the public, no going, wait a couple weeks. No, okay. So think about it this way. If the SEC hasn't seen the paperwork yet, you've got nothing to say. Now, after you file it, there's a cooling off period. That's the 20 days, send the red herring, stuff like that. Take non-binding indications of interest. No sales, zero, no money, no nothing. The SEC hasn't declared it effective. Some people call it blessing the deal, but they're just saying, hey, we don't have a problem with it. Post-effective. Now the SEC has declared it effective. Now you can sell now. Do not mess up the timing. Do not mess up the timing because remember, you do that, you end up on the FINRA list and they publish that quarterly, you're out there forever. Okay, now let's talk about that's non-exempt. Let's talk about munis. They have their own system. The primary market for their own system. They either do competitive, where issuers put the deal out for bid and the best term wins. Then we have negotiated. Issuer picks the underwriter directly. So competitive is where we put out a notice of sale. All the underwriters, I have a video on that. All the underwriters bid on the issuer, lowest cost to the issuer wins. Then we're negotiated where we know the underwriter already and we're just working with them. We negotiate the deal. We have a private offering, just basically no marketing to the public. We issue directly to institutions. Now, after it's issued, there's things that we can do, like if we have a new bond that's been issued and rates go down. This isn't part of the new issues, but it's just a term that I want you to know. Advance refunding, pre-refunding, defeasing the debt pretty much mean the same thing, escrow to maturity. You issue a bond at 5%, rates drop to 3%. You want to refinance it because I'd rather pay 3% than 5%. As the issuer, I can't call it yet. Maybe the call protection is still going in effect. So I will issue a bond at a lower rate anyway, buy treasuries for the money that we got from issuing the lower bond. And the interest from that treasury that we bought is paying some of the interest on the older bond until we can call it. So say it's not callable for 5 years. Interest rates are down now. I want to refinance. I can't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to issue a bond now at a lower rate. I have money. I take that money by treasuries, and then the treasuries will pay off a lot of the stuff going forward. Okay, good stuff. That's why, and they also, the money sits in escrow. That's why they call it escrow to maturity. Now, non-exempt use a prospectus. We use an official statement. Okay, so munis use official statements. So the preliminary official statement is called the red herring. The official statement is the final prospectus. So again, preliminary official statement is like the red herring for munis. The official statement is like the final prospectus, but again for munis. The notice of sale is what we publish in the bond buyer says, hey, bidders, come get this stupid thing. We're announcing the deal. I did a good video on it. Now, syndicates and underwriting, okay? You're going to follow the money. The syndicates, okay? The syndicate is a group, and I like repeating shit. The syndicate is a group of broker-dealers that helps sell the bond. Because selling a new issue, you can't do it alone. It's like a team sport. We all get together and sell it. So again, definition, syndicate is a temporary group of broker-dealers to spread the risk and move product. Wow, that sounds a lot like something that happens in Miami. Sounds like a cartel. They should just call it a cartel. A group of people spreading product and spreading the risk, whatever. Okay. The lead underwriter is it's like the quarterback. They price the deal, they submit the bid, and they're running it. Their name's on there, okay? The selling groups, they are not part of the syndicate. They help sell. They take a selling concession. They have no risk. And the spread is how the underwriters make their money. The manager's fee is what the manager gets. So let's wrap this up a little bit. Prospectus, not optional. You have to deliver it. Now, here's the thing about the prospectus delivery. You don't actually have to hand it to them. You can, the prospectus, you can send it to them. You give them access to a link or send them a PDF. Access equals delivery. Final prospectus must have price, must be delivered by settlement, by confirmation of trade. Red herring, no price, no sales, cooling off only.
So we have the preliminary official statement, which is for munis, like their version of a red herring. Then we have an official statement, which is like the prospectus for munis again. So then we have the preliminary prospectus or the red herring, no price, no sales, just a cooling off period only. Then we have the final prospectus. It must have the price, must be delivered by settlement. If anything changes, you need to file an amended prospectus. If it happens before the 20-day review is up, the actually SEC gets an additional 20 days to review it. If it's a post-effective, which means it's already effective, then they just review it and then you're good. Remember, it's not a brochure, it's like a contract. It's locked in. That shit is all about disclosure. Now, so pre-filing, no talking to people, right? So before they file it, no talking at all, cooling off. While the SEC is reviewing it, you can send red herrings, no sales, but you can get indications of interest. After it's effective, the SEC says you can go. Now you can actually take money. Now, let's talk about different types of people. So we have retail people, which is grandma, grandpa, everything's suitable. Let's talk about the other types of people. So we have accredited investors. Remember, 1, 2, 3 accredited. 1 million net worth, 200 single, 300 miserable. Married. Again, 1, 2, 3 accredited. 1 million net worth, no house, no car. 200 grand a year income. That's for the past 2 years and going to continue as a single person. And if you're married as a couple, it's going to be 300 again for the past 2 years and a figure it's going forward. That's used for Reg D and private placements. Now we have QIBs, the big kahunas, qualified institutional buyers. These are investment institutions with 100 million plus in assets, trading for itself and stuff like that. This is allowed for 144A, okay? So 144A is like, we talked about it before, if you buy shares on a Reg D, or if I haven't talked about it before, I will talk about it. I'm nuts. If you buy in a 144, you have a holding period, well, then you can't sell to regular people during the 6 months, but you can sell to a QIB. So QIBs can buy Reg S during the holding period, Reg D during the holding period, because they're too big. They can take care of themselves. They can defend themselves. So it's allowed to buy during these restricted periods, but it has to be an institution. So Elon Musk is not a QIB, even though he has billions, right? I used to use Bill and Melinda Gates are not QIBs, but their foundation might be. So just keep in mind that you can't push high risk unregistered deals on grandma. You got to know your customer or you're going to regret it later, because you can put unregistered deals sort of sometimes with the accredited or the QIBs. Now let's talk about it. Reg A, a mini IPO. It's what tier 1 is up to 20 million, and tier 2 is up to 75 million. Tier 1, Reg A, tier 1, Reg A plus, really, tier 1, anyone can buy. But the most that the founders can sell is 30% of the deal, or up to six and a quarter million, whatever. I don't know the numbers. I don't give a shit. But anyone can buy, and they don't have to file their paperwork with the SEC. It's like they do the little mini prospectus. They don't have to keep it up on their financials. However, tier 2 is up to 75 million. Anyone can buy, but the non-accredited have limits, right? So any accredited can do whatever they want, but non-accredited can usually only invest 10% of their net worth, or 10% of their income. You can look that up, but it's about this. So non-accredited can invest, but they're limited on how much they can buy. And Reg A tier 2, they do have to submit their financials to the SEC quarterly and then annually. And the founders can keep 30% up to 22.5 million. That's, remember, so if I go public, if I do a Reg A and I raise $75 million, I can take 22.5 million for myself because I want to cash out. Okay, you're going to use Form 1A. It's not a full registration. That's why it's called a mini IPO. And they get an offering circular. They don't get a prospectus. They get an offering circular. Same rules. It's streamlined, but still regulated. Okay, Reg D, again, exempt from SEC registration. You can only sell to accredited investors. Okay, so what it is, it's 504. 504 is up to 10 million. Sell to whoever you want. No advertising. Remember, this is selling to a private placement, not general advertising. You're selling it to specific people. Reg D 506B, up to 35 non-accredited. Everyone else will be accredited. Still no general advertising because grandma can buy this. And then the third one is 506C. It's the big one. It's anything, both 506B and C are over 5 million, and it's mostly to accredited, but 506C is only to accredited. Since only accredited people can buy, they can advertise because you sell to grandma. Grandma can't buy unless she's accredited. Now, go over 1, 2, 3 accredited is that 1 million net worth, 200 salary, single, 300 married. Or if you have an active 7 or a 65 or an 82, or if you're a partner, officer, director of the actual issuer. So you have to file a Form D within the first 15 days of the trade. Now, no registration doesn't mean no rules. It just means they don't have to register. So not everything needs to register, but it's not a free pass. Okay, you still can't commit fraud. You still can't rip people off. It's just that there's less rules. Okay, intrastate. So intrastate is a Rule 147. That's an exemption. Since it's all in one state, they don't follow they don't have to follow SEC guidelines. Kind of like you can smoke weed in Jersey and New York, but not in Pennsylvania because they haven't made it a rule yet. And it's federal crime. So if you cross state lines smoking your little ganja, you can get in trouble. Because even though it's illegal on both sides of the state line, the federal government goes, marijuana is illegal. So they can nail you. That's why this 147 works. 100% of the shareholders are from in-state. Okay, remember that. 100% of the shareholders are bought from in the state. Now, 147A allows you to make offers outside the state. That means like somebody's in another state, they can read it. But they still can only make purchases when they're in the state. Now, if they want to sell the shares after they buy it when they're in the state, they have to wait 6 months to sell it outside the state. But if they want to sell it to someone in the state, they can sell whenever. So I'll say that again. 147 offering, you buy it. You have to hold it for fully paid 6 months if you want to sell it outside the state. But if you want to sell to another statehood person, then you can sell it whenever. There are some bleed outs. So remember, some of your business can be outside the state. I've never seen a question on it where they go crazy, but 80% of your revenue, 80% of your assets, and 80% of the proceeds have to come from in the state. Now, on the old 147, all of them had to meet. Now, you just have to meet one of those. But again, all 100% of investors have to be within the state. Because if you have even one person outside the state buying it, you lose that exemption. Government bonds, muni bonds are exempt. They're not remember, even though they're exempt from the registration, they're not exempt from anti-fraud. Reg S, we sell outside the country. 100% of the people buying it are outside the country. So then the SEC doesn't have jurisdiction. Guess who can buy on this? Right, Quibs. Under 144A, they can buy it because they're exempt. Because they're just a big kahunas. if you buy a Reg S and you live, remember, a U.S. resident can buy a Reg S if they're resident. U.S. Scratch that. A U.S. citizen can buy a Reg S as long as their residency is not in the U.S. They have to hold it for 6 months before they sell it into the U.S. And but Quibs can buy during the lifetime. So when you're selling a security, always think: is it registered? Is it exempt? Am I allowed to say this right now? Because if you pitch it too early or to the wrong person or using the wrong doc, you're not losing a deal. You're getting the regulators involved. So again, is it registered? Then it has to be registered. If it's exempt, then I don't have to register it. Then, if it's exempt, are there certain people I have to sell it to? Like, is it exempt? Is it exempt? Is it a Reg D? Can I only sell it to accredited? Is it a 147? Can I only sell it into the state? If it's a Reg S, can I only sell it to foreign? If it's Reg A, can I sell it to mostly some accredited? Not. There's rules. Okay. So let's talk about some other rules about deals. Okay. So if you work inside a bank, that's called a networking arrangement. Okay, a networking arrangement, that means you have a broker deal in the back of a bank or a credit union. You have to act like you're separate. You have to make it very clear. You have to clearly say that you're separate broker dealer. You have to post signs, give disclosures, use disclaimers, especially this one. This is not FDIC insured. You can lose money, okay? You have to say this is covered by other rules. This is not FDIC insured. This is an investment. You could lose money. You must make sure you say that. So you can't let grandma think she's buying a CD when she's really buying a mutual fund. Okay. Tape recording. So if you have a certain amount of firms, I've never seen the percentage, but it's like around 20, 30%. If a certain percentage of your customers are from suspended or expelled firms, that's fine. You can do it, but they're going to make you tape the lines, which is expensive. You have 60 days. If you hit that threshold and FINRA says you have to start taping lines, then you have to have 60 days to implement it or fire someone to get under the level. You cannot hire. So if you have, say you have 25 reps from a bad firm and you have 100 reps total, you're over the limit. They're going to tell you, you can't hire another like 30 reps to put you under the threshold. You can fire some from the shady firm, but you can't hire new ones to dilute it. If not, you got to start record, monitor, and keep all the client calls. Okay, corporate financing, Rule 5110. Nobody cares about numbers. Before your firm underwrites an IPO, FINRA will review this deal structure to make sure you're not ripping off the issuer. Okay, you have to disclose the spread, all fees and expenses, any non-cash perks like getting a warrant or options or free stock gifts, any of that stuff. Okay, you can't take extra stuff that's not disclosed to do the deal. Okay. If you have a conflict of interest, 5121, if you have a conflict, like you own 10% or more of the issuer, or the issuer owns part of your firm, or your dad is a principal of the firm, or whatever it is, or you are a client, you owe them money, or whatever it is, you have to disclose that to your customer, okay? Okay. Now, if you have a conflict, that's for regular trades. If you're doing an IPO and there's a conflict, you have to bring on what they call a qualified independent underwriter. That's a separate underwriter who's going to come in and make sure that you're not ripping anyone off, because conflicts lead to problems. You have to disclose the conflict in the prospectus. Okay, IPO sales are not for insiders, so it's a thing called spinning. Don't confuse with flipping. Flipping is what I do when I see a passing score. No, flipping is when you sell to a customer and they sell it right on the opening. That's frowned on, but not illegal. So you do an IPO to a customer and they sell it right on the opening, and you're like, fuck, why'd you do that? But it's not frowned on. It's not frowned on. It is frowned on, but it's not illegal. It's just you can get in trouble. They have penalty bids that the lead underwriter will penalize you for selling to flippers. But spinning is basically bribery. So basically, you can't hand IPO allocations out to people to get their business. So let's say you wanted Pepsi to give you investment banking business, and you knew the capital advantage tutoring deal was a hot deal. We're going public, and we're going to crush the competition. You can't throw some shares, allocate shares to the CEO and the investment managers of Pepsi to get their business. Like you can say, oh, here, I'm going to give you some shares of Cat's IPO in case you want to give me some business. That's called spinning. You're literally bribing them by saying, hey, we'll give you an IPO allocation to a hot deal if you later give me your investment banking business. That's obviously fraud. Now, you can't sell IPOs to broker-dealers. Now, you can sell to portfolio managers managing the portfolio, but not to them. So I'll say this again. Broker-dealers, portfolio managers' personal accounts, and anyone, if you're a rep, executor, or broker-dealer employee, and your immediate family, they cannot buy. So I'll say this again. If you are working for a broker-dealer in any capacity, or you're a portfolio manager, or you're a broker-dealer, you cannot buy for your own account. You can buy for your customers, not for your own account. There are exceptions, okay? The whole point here is that they don't want insiders on the deal, people working the business taking all the good deals. Here are some exceptions. If you have if your spouse works for the firm, that's fine. You get directed shares. If you get directed shares, that's fine. If the issuer directs them to you. If you're part of a hedge fund or a mutual fund and you're 10% or less, you can do it. If your ownership of the fund or the mutual fund or the investment managing company is not, in your ownership is 10% or less, you can buy because they figure you're too small. Investment clubs, you can't buy it if you're in it. You have to like be carved out, if anything. So let's go over this again. So spinning shares is spinning shares to executives to win their firm's future investment banking business. It's a bribe. If clients flip, you can penalize. So if a client buys shares on an IPO and then sells them right away on the opening, the lead underwriter can penalize the firm and say, hey, you know the profit you're making? Boom, gone. You can't do a tie-in arrangement. Buy this garbage IPO and I'll give you a better one. You can't do that. Okay. It's all about fair allocations, no bullshit side deals. Okay. Okay. If there's a fixed price offering, if we set a public offering price, every member of the syndicate and selling group has to honor that. They can't sell it below. The only time you can sell below a fixed price offering is to other FINRA members. Membership has its privileges. No backroom markdowns. Everyone pays the same price. If you do this, FINRA will rip you apart. No guaranteeing, like, say, if you buy the IPO and it goes down, I'll buy it back from you. Can't do that. The exception to that is a stabilizing rule where the lead underwriter will buy the shares to keep it at the IPO price for a little bit, flip shares, because they're the ones buying them. And that comes out of their pocket. If they weren't buying it, they wouldn't give a shit. So if you have a selling agreement, you're a selling group, your contract has to tell you the offering price, your commission or concession. You can't be vague. You have to have it nailed. It's all transparent. If your firm is in an IPO, you have to tell FINRA, are you a syndicate manager? Are you a selling group member? Are you a syndicate member? That's all. The whole point of this is to make sure FINRA knows if you're manipulating the market or not. So let's go over this again. If you're selling IPOs and new issues, you have to know who you can sell to, how to get paid, any conflicts, and how transparent the whole deal has to be, for sure. Now, remember, exempt means it doesn't have to register. It does not mean there's no rules. I can't say that enough. So if it's exempt, it does not mean you can say whatever you want or pitch it to anyone with a pulse. You have to follow the rules. So don't get lazy and you don't get sued. So let's talk about exempt securities, since we just had. Some stuff is so safe or regulated elsewhere that the SEC says, fine, no need to register. Again, most things are exempt, either are safe, like government, or regulated by a previous law. Okay. But they're still subject to anti-fraud. Let's go over this. Treasuries, munis, commercial paper under 270. Commercial paper is like when a corporation issues debt for a very short time, under 270 days, and it's at a discount, unsecured. Those are all things that matter. And the SEC goes, fine, it's too fucking short. I'm not going to make you register. Nonprofit, charitable, religious, bank issued stuff. Like now, when they say bank issued, they mean like investing in the bank, not their products. Okay. So if you buy bonds or stock of the bank. So the whole point is that if there's already a rule like a utility is exempt because they have utility laws dating back to the 1890s. Banks have bank rules back to the Magna Carta. So they're already regulated out the ass. They don't need the SEC to go nuts on them. Now, exempt transactions are not that the security is exempt. Their transaction might be. So I always deal with this with this blue sky stuff. A exempt security never has to register. An exempt transaction is like a security that would normally have to register, but because of the way you're doing it, they don't have to. So let's do the example. I'm going to go public because I'm just a fucking tutoring company. I would have to register unless I do it through a Reg D or a Reg A, or a 147, or resales under 144 or 144A. Those are exempt. So keep that in mind. Exempt transactions are not that the security is exempt, but because of the way I'm doing it or who I'm selling it to, it makes that one time an exempt transaction. So one last thing before the full prospectus is out. We can do what they call a tombstone. A tombstone ad is like, looks like a tombstone. I'll try to put a picture up here. But it's very specific, that it's very not generic, but very specific when it do. It says who the issuer is, the type of security, maybe the dollar amount, where to get the prospectus, and who the underwriters are. You can't hype it, give projections, or imply guarantees. Okay. So the whole point here is that if you do a tombstone, it can say the name of the company, all the underwriters, how much money we're getting, maybe the price, depending, probably not the price, and no date. But it should have a warning on it saying this is not an offer for sale. If you want to buy it, you have to contact the underwriter, and they'll give you a prospectus. If you 134A allows it, if you're letting firms teach about options without selling it, they don't need a prospectus or a ODD and all that stuff. So you can do education about options. That's not considered selling. That's just saying, hey, these are calls, these are puts. I do that all day long. Okay. So you can basically, in education, explain how puts and calls work, show risk diagrams, hand out general education, but you cannot recommend strategies, pitch a trade, and you have to at some point give the ODD. Again, if it sounds like a sales pitch, you've gone too far. Okay. Now, Rule 144. So I didn't talk about it yet. Rule 144 is for basically two things. If you buy a Reg D, you have to follow the 144 rules, or even a pipe. 144 rules for Reg D or a pipe offering. A pipe offering is when it's called a private investment in a public entity. So that's like a bunch of accredited investors. They go ride the pipe. Woo, that's what she said. And they call up Home Depot and say, hey, I want to buy $30 million worth of your stock through a private placement. Home Depot goes, sure, you want to give me cash? They get to buy the stock at a discount. But because that would dilute shares because you're issuing new ones, they will have to hold it for 6 months fully paid under 144. If you buy Reg D, you have to hold it 6 months fully paid. After the 6 months is up, you follow 144 and you sell your shares free and clear. Here's another part. So now, if you are a control person, I call them the pods, partners, officers, directors, and big ass shareholders, meaning over 10%. Pods, you are subject to the 144 rules for whatever share you own. Not that you have a holding period, but you have a volume restriction. So think Bezos, Gates, Musk, T-Boone Pickens, whatever, Branson of whatever, Cuban. If they're a partner, officer, director, or own more than 10% of their company, even a publicly traded company, they can sell it whenever, but they have to follow the 144 rules, which are 144. You can sell the greater of 1% of the outstanding, 4 weeks trading volume, 4 times a year. Again, you can sell the greater of 1% of the outstanding, 4 weeks trading volume, 4 times a year, which is every 90 days. There is a dribble rule or de minimis thing where they go, okay, if you sell up to 5,000 shares, but no more than 50 grand every 90 days, we're not going to make you file a 144. Maybe you need to pay a bill. So again, we just did it. If it's a 144 unrestricted 6-month holding, then volume restrictions for the affiliates, okay? And they file 144. 144A is I said this already, during the holding period, you can sell to quibs all you want during the restricted period, anytime you want, because the idea is that they can defend themselves. 145 is more M&A securities. When companies merge, reclassify their shares, or acquire and stock changes hands, the SEC says that's a sale, and you're going to have to register, okay? You have to register the new shares, file a prospectus, disclose your risk as it's an IPO. You're creating new securities. We've done 147. In case you see it, a free writing prospectus is usually only for bigger companies. It's a prospectus. And look, anything that you put in writing that's about an IPO or a new offering is a prospectus. So they allow for large companies to use a non-traditional free writing prospectus because the idea is that they're big enough, they're following the rules, and we're going to let them do it. And that's Rule 164. You're not going to go crazy on it, maybe on the 24, but not this. Just know that the free writing prospectus allows them to do stuff outside their official prospectus. It has to have a legend pointing to the official prospectus. You have to stay consistent with the prospectus and not exaggerate. So SEC exemptions are not shortcuts. They're carefully written technical carve-outs that let deals move faster, but only if you follow the rules. So say the wrong thing, boom, that exempt deal now becomes illegal. So